All right, let's just jump right into this. I want you to picture this scene. It's February 2026. You're in a high-tech war room deep in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. The country's top generals are all there, just staring at these satellite images of Kabul. But here's the thing. The targets they're looking at, they aren't who you'd expect. They are aiming their weapons at the very people they created. The proxy force they spent decades building is now the enemy right in their crosshairs. This is the story of how it all went so incredibly wrong. So on February 27th, 2026, Pakistan's defense minister makes this just stunning declaration. Now, look, given Pakistan's history, anyone would immediately assume he was talking about India, right? But he wasn't. This declaration of open war was aimed at the Afghan Taliban. Yeah, the same Taliban that Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI, trained, funded, and backed for decades.
So how on earth did this happen? How did the creator find itself in a full-blown war with its own creation? It's a story with a twist so sharp, I don't think even Pakistan's own top brass really saw it coming. To really get this, we've got to go back, way back, to the 1990s, when Pakistan first decided it was going to play puppet master over in Afghanistan. The whole strategy, the whole gambit, was built on one single core idea. And that idea was something called strategic depth. See, with Afghanistan just plunged into a brutal civil war, Pakistan's ISI saw a golden opportunity. They figured if they could install a friendly government in Kabul, they could use Afghanistan as a kind of strategic buffer zone against their number one rival, India. So in 1994, the ISI made an offer to this one-eyed cleric named Mullah Omar. The deal was simple. We'll give you weapons, we'll give you money, we'll give you training. All you have to do is take over Afghanistan and, listen to us. And he accepted. The ISI sent in weapons and oil tankers, and suddenly madrasas inside Pakistan turned into these massive recruitment centers. And you know what? It worked. It worked astonishingly fast. By 1996, the Taliban had captured Kabul, and Pakistan was one of only 3 countries on the entire planet to recognize their government. Then, of course, 9/11 happened. The US invades Afghanistan, topples the Taliban. And publicly, Pakistan becomes this key American ally in the war on terror. But secretly, they were playing a dangerous double game, giving that exact same Taliban safe haven, training, and cash for the next 20 years. Pakistan really thought it had the perfect strategy. But here's the lesson. The power you create from religious extremism, it never really belongs to you. It plays by its own rules. And that power was about to turn right back on its creator. And this is where a second, really crucial group enters our story. So to understand what went wrong, we need to make a really critical distinction here. First, you've got the Afghan Taliban, the group Pakistan created to rule Afghanistan. And then you've got the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP, the Pakistani Taliban. Now, these guys were educated in the same ISI-backed madrasas. They fought alongside the Afghan Taliban. But when Pakistan sided with the US, they turned against the Pakistani state itself. Their one goal: overthrow Pakistan's government and install their own version of Sharia law. And here's the absolute kicker. They have pledged their allegiance to the Afghan Taliban, who in turn gives them safe haven. The TTP, they've unleashed rivers of blood inside Pakistan. To understand why, you only need to know this one number, 132. That is the number of children, some as young as 8 years old, who were murdered by the TTP when they stormed an army public school in Peshawar back in 2014. They went from classroom to classroom just shooting them. It was, without a doubt, the darkest day in Pakistan's history. And yet, despite the very real threat from the TTP, when the Afghan Taliban retook power in 2021, Pakistan's leadership was, believe it or not, triumphant. The prime minister at the time, Imran Khan, celebrated it as if it were Pakistan's own victory. They actually thought their puppets were back on the throne. It was a massive, massive miscalculation. And that colossal miscalculation has led us right here, to a dangerous, bloody deadlock, where Pakistan is totally trapped, fighting an enemy it can't defeat, an enemy that's being sheltered by a so-called friend it can't control. The cost of this deadlock has just been devastating. After the Taliban came back in 2021, TTP attacks just surged dramatically. In 2024, over 2,200 people were killed in terror-related incidents in Pakistan. The next year, by 2025, that number had almost doubled to over 4,000.
And that is why Pakistan's patience finally just snapped.
So Pakistan's demand for the Afghan Taliban is incredibly simple. Take action against the TTP. Crush them, expel them, do something. But the Taliban, they won't do it. And the reason why is really the core of this entire conflict. You see, the Taliban leadership has this serious dilemma. On one hand, you've got Pakistan threatening more and more airstrikes. But on the other hand, their own intelligence chiefs are telling them, look, if we move against the TTP, it's thousands of battle-hardened fighters aren't just going to disappear. No, they'll defect to the Taliban's biggest rival in Afghanistan, ISIS-Khorasan. So instead of solving one problem, they'd end up creating a much, much bigger one. This deadlock, well, it just couldn't hold. In late 2025, Pakistan lost its patience and launched this unprecedented airstrike right on Kabul, targeting the TTP chief. The Taliban retaliated, and by February 2026, they launched their own organized cross-border offensive. And that was the final straw. Pakistan declared open war, and the conflict spiraled so rapidly, culminating in a just horrific airstrike on a hospital that reportedly killed over 400 people. Which brings us to the ultimate tragic irony of this entire story. Pakistan's grand strategy, this thing that was decades in the making, hasn't just failed, it has backfired in the most spectacular way you can possibly imagine. Remember the whole point of this? Strategic depth against India. But look at the reality today. The very Taliban that Pakistan built to counter India is now busy signing trade agreements and infrastructure deals with Indian companies, calling India an important partner. It's just unbelievable. When you boil it all down, it comes to this disastrous chain of events. Pakistan created the Taliban. The Taliban gave shelter to the TTP. The TTP waged war on Pakistan. And now, Pakistan finds itself desperately trying to destroy a monster of its own making, and it's burning down the entire neighborhood in the process. And that all leads to one final, really sobering question. After spending decades fanning these flames of extremism for its own strategic goals, can Pakistan now extinguish a fire that has grown into a completely uncontrollable inferno? And maybe more importantly, how many more innocent lives are going to be burned before it's finally put out?